Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of truth, warriors of discipline, and all who walk the path of inner cultivation, forgetfulness is the greatest threat to the spiritually chosen. Shi Heng Yi warns that those who have set their hearts on the path of inner cultivation, wisdom, and self-mastery must remain vigilant against this silent enemy. Forgetfulness is not simply about losing memory of mundane details. It is the gradual erosion of one's deepest truths and commitments. It begins when a person loses sight of why they chose the spiritual path in the first place. Often, this happens not because of a sudden catastrophe, but due to subtle distractions and unnoticed shifts in daily life. People who were once committed to waking up early for meditation start to tell themselves, "I will just rest today," and then another day, until days become weeks and weeks become months. The practice that once brought them clarity, strength, and connection to their higher self fades into something they remember fondly, but no longer embody. This is the slow poison of forgetfulness. Shi Heng Yi teaches that forgetfulness is dangerous because it is insidious. Unlike visible enemies, forgetfulness creeps in unnoticed. It may come disguised as busyness, as overworking in the name of duty or success. It may come as emotional overwhelm, where pain or stress clouds the mind so deeply that a person's spiritual disciplines are abandoned. It may even come as spiritual arrogance, where a practitioner believes, "I am now beyond these practices," only to realize later that they have lost their inner foundation. Forgetfulness is also nurtured by an environment that encourages mindlessness. In modern life, we are constantly bombarded with notifications, news, and endless streams of information. Each notification steals a piece of our presence. Each unconscious conversation takes away from the silence needed for clarity. Each moment spent in distraction strengthens the chains of forgetfulness. Shi Heng Yi warns that when you forget your purpose, your practices lose life. What was once an intentional path becomes mechanical or completely abandoned. The spiritually chosen are those who once vowed to walk a path of integrity, clarity, compassion, discipline, and presence. They vowed to overcome their inner demons, to rise above laziness, anger, greed, jealousy, and ignorance. But forgetfulness dissolves these vows. It makes a person live like everyone else, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, seeking approval, fearing rejection, and living in anxiety about the future or regret about the past. Forgetfulness steals the essence of spiritual life. To be awake, to live fully awake, requires constant remembrance. Remembrance of who you are beyond your name, profession, relationships, and achievements. Remembrance that you are a being of consciousness with a purpose higher than survival and pleasure. Remembrance that your body is a temple, your mind is a tool, and your spirit is the master that must guide them both. Forgetfulness also leads to spiritual decay because it cuts off the practitioner from the stream of life force within. Practices such as Qi Gong, meditation, prayer, mindful movement, and conscious breathing are not just rituals. They are bridges that connect the body and mind to the spirit, energizing and cleansing the entire being. When these are neglected, stagnation sets in. Stagnation in the body brings disease. Stagnation in the mind brings depression, confusion, and anxiety. Stagnation in the spirit brings despair and the sense of meaninglessness that many people silently suffer from despite outward success. Shi Heng Yi urges the spiritually chosen to remember that the greatest loss is not wealth, relationships, or status. The greatest loss is the loss of one's own spirit. When a person forgets themselves, they wander through life like a ghost in their own home, present physically but absent in essence. Therefore, he teaches that daily remembrance is the antidote to forgetfulness. Whether it is through lighting a candle at dawn, bowing before the altar of truth within, practicing silent breathing, or reciting affirmations of purpose and intention, remembrance must become a daily act. Just as one bathes the body to remain clean, one must bathe the mind and spirit in remembrance to remain awake. Forgetfulness thrives when life is lived without pauses. To counter it, the spiritually chosen must cultivate sacred pauses throughout their day, moments to stop, breathe, observe, and remember. Remember your vows. Remember your discipline. Remember your true nature. Remember the suffering caused by ignorance and the freedom that comes with clarity. Remember your teachers, your lineage, your highest aspirations. Remember the promise you made to yourself to rise each day and walk the path of truth. In conclusion, Shi Heng Yi's warning that forgetfulness is the greatest threat to the spiritually chosen is a call to awaken fully. It is a reminder that the spiritual path is not about dramatic rituals or grand declarations, but about simple daily remembrance. Those who forget become lost even if they appear successful to the world. Those who remember remain anchored in truth, even amidst chaos. The choice lies in each moment to remember or to forget, and in this choice, your entire destiny is shaped. Shi Heng Yi emphasizes that discipline without awareness is hollow. This teaching, though seemingly simple, carries profound implications for anyone walking the path of self, mastery, and spiritual growth. Many people who are spiritually inclined build strong disciplines. They wake up early, practice meditation, train their bodies, observe fasting, restrain their speech, or read sacred texts daily. However, without awareness, these disciplines can become mere habits performed mechanically, disconnected from their original purpose. When a person continues rituals without conscious awareness, discipline loses its transformative power and becomes an empty shell. This is why some people, despite years of practice, remain emotionally reactive, unkind in speech, judgmental of others, or rigid in their views. Their discipline has become hollow because it is not infused with the living presence of awareness. Shi Heng Yi teaches that discipline is like a sword, but awareness is the hand that wields it wisely. A sword without a skilled and present wielder is dangerous and ineffective. Similarly, discipline without awareness can create arrogance, rigidity, and spiritual pride, rather than humility, adaptability, and compassion. Awareness is the silent witness within, the observer that sees without judgment, but with clarity. When awareness is merged with discipline, every action becomes alive. The breath becomes more than inhalation and exhalation. It becomes a conscious bridge to life. Movement becomes more than exercise. It becomes an expression of presence. Speech becomes more than words. It becomes a conscious act of creation or healing. When awareness is absent, discipline becomes a routine that the ego attaches itself to for identity and superiority. A person may fast and look down upon those who eat freely. They may meditate daily and see others as inferior for not doing so. They may train their body hard and become arrogant in strength. All these reveal discipline without awareness. Because your humble's destiny does not wait for perfect. It WSHINITS for practitioners that PER discipline is not S about I, CONTENT comparison or ego validation, but about purifying the mind and awakening the spirit. When discipline is guided by awareness, even the simplest acts become sacred. Drinking tea with awareness becomes meditation. Walking becomes walking meditation. Eating becomes an act of gratitude and mindful nourishment. In this way, life itself becomes the temple, and each action becomes worship. Shi Heng Yi warns that hollow discipline leads to spiritual dryness. The practitioner feels stuck despite their routine because awareness, which is the water of life, is missing. Awareness brings freshness, newness, and deep insight into every repetition. A person may practice Qigong every day for 10 years, but without awareness, they only build external form. With awareness, each day reveals a new layer of subtle understanding, internal alignment, and energetic harmony. Awareness transforms discipline from an imposed external structure into a joyful internal flowering. It allows a practitioner to adjust, refine, and deepen their practice, rather than becoming mechanical and stagnant. Another danger of discipline without awareness is that it strengthens the ego's attachment to achievement and results. Spiritual discipline, when practiced with awareness, is free from attachment. The practitioner trains not to prove something, but to express their deepest nature. They meditate not to gain powers, but to return to their true self. They observe moral discipline not to appear righteous, but to protect their mind from chaos. Awareness strips away the ego's claim over discipline and returns it to its rightful place as a tool for liberation rather than bondage. Shi Heng Yi's teaching invites the spiritually chosen to examine their daily practices honestly. Are you practicing with living awareness, or has your practice become lifeless repetition? Do you feel fresh and renewed after your disciplines, or do you feel burdened and self-righteous? Are your disciplines making you kinder, more compassionate, more understanding, or simply more disciplined outwardly while remaining restless inwardly? These questions cut through illusions and invite deep self-reflection. Bringing awareness into discipline requires humility and presence. It requires slowing down and fully immersing yourself in each act without rushing to the next. It requires listening to the body during training, feeling each breath deeply during meditation, observing thoughts without entanglement, and noticing the intentions behind every word spoken. This merging of discipline and awareness is the true essence of spiritual practice in Shi Heng Yi's teaching. In conclusion, discipline without awareness is hollow because it lacks life, presence, and transformative power. Shi Heng Yi warns the spiritually chosen to not fall into this trap of mechanical practice, which only builds ego structures and spiritual pride without inner liberation. Awareness breathes life into discipline, transforming each practice into a conscious act of awakening. When awareness and discipline merge, every moment becomes an opportunity to train the mind, purify the heart, and align with the spirit. This is the path to true mastery, not rigid repetition, but conscious living in every breath and action. For in the end, it is not what you do mechanically that transforms you. It is what you do with deep awareness, humility, and presence that awakens your highest self. Shi Heng Yi warns that darkness does not always appear as obvious evil. In our era, he teaches, darkness often appears as comfort, distraction, and subtle habits that weaken the spirit over time. This is one of the most dangerous forms of spiritual decay because it works silently and invisibly. Many imagine darkness as malicious forces, violent events, or people openly practicing evil. However, the reality for the spiritually chosen is that their downfall rarely comes from such direct threats. It comes instead from the small comforts that numb their spirit and the endless distractions that dilute their focus. Comfort is not inherently wrong. Rest, food, warmth, and safety are natural needs of the human body. But when comfort becomes the guiding principle of life, it transforms into darkness. The spiritually chosen begin to avoid challenges, growth, and necessary discomfort. They choose the easier path, the softer option, the less demanding route, forgetting that their greatness was born from embracing hardship with courage and faith. They begin to tell themselves, "I will train tomorrow," "I will meditate when I feel like it," or "I deserve this indulgence because I worked hard today." Slowly, they lose the fire of discipline that once purified their mind and awakened their spirit. Comfort becomes their silent captor, chaining their potential in golden locks. Distraction is another face of darkness in modern life. Shi Heng Yi teaches that a distracted mind cannot realize truth. Distraction fragments attention and scatters energy. From the moment a person wakes up, they are pulled in 100 directions: messages, notifications, social media feeds, news, opinions, and endless entertainment. Each distraction steals a piece of presence, making it harder to remain anchored in awareness. The spiritually chosen are not immune to these distractions. In fact, because their inner light is brighter, distractions seek the more to dim their focus. A person may sit for meditation, but their mind keeps replaying a video they watched the night before. They may train their body, but thoughts of business, relationships, and social media likes weaken their concentration. Distraction divides the spirit, and a divided spirit is powerless. Shi Heng Yi reminds us that distraction is not just external. There are inner distractions too: repetitive thoughts, emotional attachments, resentments, regrets, and fears that keep the mind restless. Many spiritually chosen people appear focused externally, but carry deep inner distractions that sap their energy silently. To overcome this darkness, one must cultivate inner silence and external simplicity. Only then can clarity arise, cutting through distraction like a sword through mist. Subtle habits are the final face of darkness he warns about in this key point. Habits are powerful because they build character and destiny. However, negative habits often appear harmless at first. Sleeping late every night, excessive eating or snacking, gossiping under the guise of concern, complaining about life's difficulties, or spending hours on entertainment become rooted in daily life. Until they define the person's identity, Shi Heng Yi teaches that habits are like seeds. Small negative habits grow into thick weeds that choke the life force of the spirit. Each time you indulge a negative habit, you strengthen the chains of ignorance. Each time you choose a positive habit, you strengthen the wings of your spirit. These comforts, distractions, and habits appear harmless. They even feel good temporarily, but their cost is your life force, your clarity, your potential, and your inner freedom. Darkness thrives not because it is powerful, but because it is unnoticed and unchallenged. The spiritually chosen must understand that their greatest battles are not external wars, but these subtle inner wars. The enemy is not always someone outside, but the voice that says, "It's okay to skip today. You deserve this indulgence," or "This distraction won't harm you." Each time you believe these voices without awareness, you step further away from your purpose. Shi Heng Yi calls upon the spiritually chosen to remain vigilant. Comfort must be balanced with disciplined challenge. Distraction must be countered with single, pointed focus and regular digital detox. Negative habits must be uprooted through awareness, replacing them with habits that build strength, clarity, and humility. Spiritual life is not about rejecting all comfort or pleasure. It is about mastery to enjoy comforts without being enslaved, to use distractions as tools for creativity rather than addiction, and to cultivate habits that align with your highest self. In conclusion, darkness in this era often appears not as obvious evil, but as subtle comforts, distractions, and habits that weaken the spirit quietly. Shi Heng Yi's warning is not to create fear, but to awaken the spiritually chosen to the silent enemies within their daily life. Without awareness, these small weaknesses accumulate into great suffering. With awareness, each becomes an opportunity to rise above and strengthen the spirit. The choice remains in each breath, each thought, each action. You can choose darkness disguised as comfort and distraction, or you can choose the light of disciplined, focused, and aware living. Only those who choose the latter remain spiritually chosen in truth, and not just in name. Shi Heng Yi's fourth warning for the spiritually chosen is perhaps the most direct and powerful. If you do not conquer your mind each day, it will conquer you. This truth is timeless and universal across all spiritual traditions, yet it remains one of the most neglected disciplines in daily life. Conquering the mind does not mean suppressing thoughts or forcing positivity. It means cultivating mastery over your mental landscape so that your thoughts, emotions, and reactions serve your higher purpose rather than enslaving you in cycles of suffering. Shi Heng Yi teaches that the mind is like a wild horse. If you do not train it with patience, awareness, and wisdom, it will carry you wherever it wishes into fear, anger, jealousy, confusion, and countless destructive behaviors. But if you train it daily, it becomes your most powerful ally on the journey of self, mastery, and inner peace. Every day upon waking, a battle begins in the mind. Thoughts of worries, tasks, resentments, and self-doubt rush forward like an uninvited army. For the spiritually chosen, this battle is even more intense because their inner light provokes the shadows within. The mind resists discipline. It seeks the easier path, the comfortable choice, the gratification of desires. If left unconquered, the mind becomes the ruler of your life, and you remain a slave to its whims. One day you feel motivated and act with clarity. The next day you feel heavy, distracted, and lost. Life becomes a roller coaster driven by mood, emotion, and impulse rather than conscious intention. Shi Heng Yi emphasizes that conquering the mind is a daily act. Yesterday's victory does not guarantee today's. Just as the body requires daily nourishment and cleansing, the mind requires daily training and purification. This training can take many forms: meditation, mindful breathing, silent reflection, or disciplined thought observation. Meditation is the foundation because it reveals to you the restless nature of the mind. As you sit in silence, thoughts arise uninvited. Some are pleasant, others painful, but all reveal the nature of your inner world. The purpose is not to suppress them, but to observe them with clarity and detachment, realizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness within which thoughts arise and dissolve. Conquering the mind also means mastering your emotional reactions. The mind and emotions are deeply connected. A thought of insult provokes anger. A thought of loss provokes sadness. A thought of fear provokes anxiety. If you do not conquer your mind, emotions will drag you through cycles of reaction, regret, and helplessness. Mastering emotional reaction requires pausing before responding, breathing before speaking, and observing before judging. Shi Heng Yi teaches that emotional mastery is not about becoming cold and detached, but about choosing your responses consciously rather than reacting impulsively. Another dimension of conquering the mind is mastery over desires and aversions. The mind naturally seeks pleasure and avoids discomfort. This is biological and psychological conditioning. However, the spiritually chosen must rise beyond these instincts to act from purpose and principle rather than craving and fear. When you act only to seek pleasure or avoid pain, you remain bound to the lowest impulses of the mind. Conquering the mind means training it to act in alignment with your highest goals. even when it is uncomfortable, rising early to meditate when the body wants to sleep, eating mindfully when the senses crave indulgence, working with focus when the mind seeks distraction. These are acts of conquering the mind. Shi Heng Yi also warns that an unconquered mind will enslave you to external validation. It will make you seek praise, attention, and approval, leading you away from your true path. When the mind is conquered, you stand rooted in your own truth. Praise does not inflate you. Criticism does not deflate you. You remain centered, acting from inner conviction rather than public